This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Why, yes, let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing. On this episode, hey, you ought to know we need to start the show.
Hey, have you seen my flannel shirt anywhere? I feel like a basket case looking for it.
I mean, I get it. You want to be my hero, but you need to stop walking around like a zombie. We have a guest tonight.
I know, but I don't want to be a loser. It's Hannah Schaefer, and she's in the middle of her Damn the Man Save the Music Kickstarter, and I want her to feel welcome.
Man, stop being all apologies, and let's get this runaway train started.
All right. I'm sorry for being such a creep. I just wanted to be a better man. All right, finish up the intro before it's closing time.
Closing time. One last call for okay, and welcome to the 264th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. On tonight's show, we have game designer Hannah Schaefer on to talk about designing genre into your games. As always, I am Chris.
And I'm Phil.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
And would you please
and
introduce yourself? Yeah, it's Hannah. Hello.
Hi.
Hannah, welcome to the Misdirected Mark Podcast. I hope you enjoyed that intro.
Oh, it was amazing. It had taken me a minute when I was reading through it to see what you were doing there, but I got it.
Nice, very nice. So if you don't mind, would you tell us and the folks at home a bit about yourself, Make Big Things, etc., all the game design stuff that you do?
Sure, yeah. So I am Hannah Schaefer. I am a tabletop game designer. I'm part of a 3-person design cooperative called Make Big Things. We're responsible for the games Questlandia, Noirlandia, and 14 Days. And right now we're kickstarting Damn the Man Save the Music, which is a game about saving your failing 90s indie record store. I design with my friend Brian Van Slyke and my partner Evan Rowland. And yeah, we make these weird little games that, enough people want to play to make this sustainable for us.
Well, Damn the Man Save the Music. It's only been kickstarting for, about a week now? And it's already right around $10,000 last time I looked.
Yeah, so it's, a little bit under. But, our games, I think, they hit a pretty niche audience, but it is an enthusiastic audience. And that is the part that I care about the most.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's Empire Records, the role-playing game. So, how can you go wrong there? I love Empire Records.
Yeah.
So, as I like to say always, what is going on? And I guess we'll start with you, Hannah. You started with yourself, and let's keep going on. So what is going on with you? Because you got this Kickstarter going on.
Yeah, well, I have a Kickstarter going on, which if you've ever run a Kickstarter, that sort of feels like all that's going on.
It's true.
It is sort of all-consuming. I also just realized that I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary working for John Wick Presents, which is the game company that did 7th Sea.
Nice.
I've been their marketing director for about a year, so that's exciting. So I've been sort of reflecting on the work that I've done for them and the work I can do in the future. I've been playing some Monster Hearts. I'm in a 2-year-long Monster Hearts campaign that just keeps going and going. And I've also been watching the new Twin Peaks.
Are you?
So, is anybody here watching the new Twin Peaks?
I am not. Are you enjoying it?
Yes. It's a qualified yes, but yes.
Oh, okay. Is it as weird as we all keep hearing it is?
It's so weird. It's really weird, but it's really good.
I didn't know that you were the marketing director for John Wick Presents.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that.
Yes.
I know it's like I moonlight.
So, not only are you running the Damn the Man Save the Music Kickstarter, but there's a Kickstarter going on for 7th Sea War of the Cross right now, which is a John Wick Presents game. So you're probably doing double duty then, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. I did tell them, leading up to this Kickstarter, I was like, guys, I don't want to, have to choose my loyalties here. But, so, yeah, I have been putting quite a bit of work into that one also. Very
nice, very nice. I know that's at $54,000 right now, and you're looking to get to $150K to fund. So, I hope it kicks up and steps up a notch. Do you have any plans for what's going on with that, or anything you want to say to the listeners at home about that before we get into other things?
Yeah, it's a very different game than Damn the Man, obviously a really different audience. I definitely think that they'll make it. It's a bold move. They're pitching a diplomatic strategy game to a really new crowd, bringing in new board gamers and diverging from these really story-based like this very story-based game. But I think it's great, and I've had a chance to play the game, and it's a really tight game.
Nice, very nice. I mean, I do love me a good kind of big board game, especially if it's in the vein of Risk, but way better than Risk, because I hate Risk. So
that's that's the way it's being pitched. So
yeah, it's like somewhere like what between like Risk and Diplomacy, right?
yeah, they've said sort of like a new take on Dune and Diplomacy. So if you're,
Nice.
if you can get into those diplomatic strategy games and you also like Seventh Sea, then you will be right at the intersection of this market.
I love that in Houses of the Blooded, John has a whole thing about playing Diplomacy. Because he talks about PvP in Houses of the Blooded and about, how somebody's going to go home not happy.
Yeah.
Or actually, everybody but one player
Yeah.
will go home not happy.
so let me kick it
Yeah,
to...
so
oh, sorry, go
this
ahead.
one
Keep
makes you hate your friends less.
Oh, yeah,
this
that's good.
this one is not designed to make you hate your friends.
That's a good design. Well, that's a good design goal when you're going after the Diplomacy-like market. Less hate
Yeah.
afterwards.
going. So let me kick it to somebody else. Bob,
Yeah.
what is going on, man?
I recently jumped back into the Minecraft pool again after a hiatus of maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks. I play with a bunch of people from work, and one of the guys has his own server that we all play on. Mm-hmm. So we get on there, we run around, do stuff together, and build our bases and explore, and and do Minecraft things. Punch trees.
Punch trees for wood.
Punch trees for wood. There you go. So doing that again. Blades in the Dark over the weekend, which is always fun. We had a nice successful score.
Yes,
That,
no fire.
No fire. We didn't blow anything up.
Look, successful is a point of view.
Yeah,
You didn't burn down another art museum.
Yeah, we took 2 traumas,
Yes, that was actually...
that is true. That is true.
but we learned how to play the game. That was the
That
important
was
thing.
another key
Yeah, I
thing.
did feel like we actually made some like actual measurable progress in understanding the mechanics of that
Yeah.
game.
Like, I'm pretty sure I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now if at least one guy gets it, then it'll filter around quicker to the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But that's always fun, and I'm getting ready to throw down some more game design ideas. The brain's been churning on stuff, and while I still have some stuff in active development, I've got a couple more ideas that I need to start throwing out.
Really, I got a
raw
folder of
alphas.
Hydro Hacker stuff to hand you.
Well, that too, but you said you were going to put that on the shelf. Oh, I'm going to give away your article for Gnome Stew. Sorry.
That's right. Don't ghost my article, man.
Yeah.
Don't
No
ghost your
ghosting.
article? No.
But yeah, other than that, it's work, eat, sleep, man.
Work, eat, sleep.
Work, eat, sleep. Sometimes the days tend to blend.
You want to kick it to
And
somebody
right
else?
now. So yeah, I'm thinking, Phil, what's going on, man?
Yeah, well, let's see. So from the last time we recorded last week, I walked right into my Origins con drop. And it took me about 3 days to kind of get out of that slump. Luckily for me, my office, most of my office was at a conference, at the same conference. There was a skeleton staff in the office. So I kind of just slumped my way through the rest of that week and ate some chocolate and ice cream and just kind of self-cared my way out of con drop. But once I recovered, I got super excited and spent all last weekend working on some new mechanics for Hydro Hacker operatives, gutting the Push Your Luck card game that was uncomfortably wedged into the middle of the game. I think we talked about that last week. And if I didn't talk enough about it last week, tomorrow morning, go check on Gnome Stew because I have a design journal article talking about what happened and what I wound up doing. But anyway, I wrote all new, what I think is a much better system for the role-playing game. Mm-hmm. And I did that. It started innocently enough. I was like, all right, I'm gonna design the sheet. And then I'm like, oh, I got to go fix the playbooks. Oh, I should go write the chapter for the draft for the chapter for the book. So I did. I wrote all weekend, and it actually felt really good to be designing again. I also played Blades with you guys because I ran that game. And during the weekend, when I wasn't napping, designing, or in between those, I was watching Steven Universe, which I'm finally now actively catching up on.
Yay.
Which I love. It's
so
fantastic.
good.
The hardest part is to keep the rest of you shut up when I tell you where I am in the series.
True.
That's been a real challenge to keep all of you quiet. I'm doing my best to get through them, so, leave me alone. I'm watching like 3 to 4 of them a day, interspersed throughout my day. And I just started picking up the second season of Young Justice. which did take me a episode or two to be like, well, what's going on here? Like, apparently we jumped a few years in the campaign.
It happens, yes.
And catching up to all the stuff that happened, which I also really liked. So like 5 or 6 episodes now into Young Justice and digging that as well.
What? Miss Martian and Superboy aren't together?
That's like the least shocking thing that happened.
Yeah, least.
Yeah.
By the way, spoilers, everybody.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
not going to, I mean, everybody else was good to me. I'm not spoiling anything else, but yeah, it took me a few minutes. It takes a few episodes to kind of piece together exactly what happened, let alone that they just jammed like a whole new roster of people into the show as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it's still good though. Like I'm still digging it.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
It's good. I'm loving Steven Universe though. Like I like if I didn't have to be writing stuff, I would just let that thing run on. I would just binge my way through a whole like chunk of it.
I'm of the opinion Steven Universe is a master class on how to write short form storytelling over a long story arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really smart.
It's super smart.
So what about you, man? What have you been up to?
I've been writing a bunch of stuff and also editing a bunch of audio. I can't really talk about the things that I'm writing. I'm not allowed. So
Nice. That's awesome. I like that.
yeah, sorry. And but I finished my editing pass on the Streets of Avalon book.
Well, that's good.
So once Brett goes in and takes a look at a few things that I suggested, I'll be ready to kick that into the encoded machine, and we'll get it moving along.
That's awesome. Hey, before we jump to any more segments, because it was on the network, and I feel like we should say something about it. Can we say congratulations to Darcy Ross?
We certainly can say congratulations to Darcy Ross.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Darcy, who is also part of this network, had a pretty amazing announcement yesterday, and I think we are all extremely excited for her.
Very much so.
Yep.
Do you want to do it? Just do it.
What's that?
Well, you didn't say what it was.
Oh, but she's becoming the community. Well, I mean, we had the audio out, and it's been all over the internet. But she's becoming the community manager for Monty Cook Games. Which I mean, they're fantastic, and adding Darcy to it can only make that better.
I agree.
Yep.
I love it, man. It's so good. It's so good. It's good for us in a lot of ways, but it's also really good. Right?
It's really good. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think Darcy will be a great fit. I mean, she's done so much good stuff with Contessa that, having her manage the Monty Cook community, a community that I think is actually a really good fit for Darcy. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Have any feels about that, Hannah?
Yay, Darcy. I'm so happy. Yeah, Darcy's great. I love Darcy.
All right, let us move on to a few announcements. So
Yes.
next week's show, so it's the 4th of July.
Right.
And I got here a little bit late, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you two. The show is either going to be next week, Saturday or Thursday.
Oh, we don't know yet.
We don't know yet because I have a thing that I didn't realize I had.
Okay, so we need to...
Surprise.
All right, so we will put out something on all of our social media. What we're not going to do is we are not going to have a show on the 4th of July
Correct.
because we're going out to see fireworks, and we figure the rest of you would be too. So we're not going to sit in a basement all evening while fireworks are going off.
Yeah, that'd be weird because there'd be like explosions and stuff, and be like, why are we being attacked?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you hear it too because the park's down the street from here. But
Absolutely.
anyway, so what we're going to do is a lot of our listeners have said that they weren't able to come hang out on Twitch or join the chat room for life because we record on Tuesday nights. So this is your opportunity because we're going to move the show for one episode, and we'll do it again sometime in the future. We're going to move the show one episode to either Thursday or Saturday evening, same time, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 6:45 p.m. the Queen's time. And we will do our normal show. And then, a different group of people can come listen to it.
Yeah, and I apologize for those folks who are in weird time zones that were hoping that we were going to record earlier in the day so they could have listened to us, but that's just it's impossible for us at the moment. Yeah, but at some point in the future we'll probably record at a different time so certain other people can listen to it.
That would be interesting, but I would try it.
Yeah. Just like as a one-off for those folks.
Right, and then on the 11th we'll go back to our normal recording schedule.
Correct. All right, well, we're all good here. We're going to move on to our main segment, which is to talk about Dan the Man Save the Music, the Kickstarter. Oh, no, we're not. I'm sorry, we're going to talk about the Kickstarter first. Man, I am losing my mind. Sorry about that. Just read what's in the thing.
Yeah, just follow the notes, man.
Yeah.
You got it right here. The outline's right here.
I'm looking right at it, too. It's pretty bad. I usually am better than that. Anyway, we're going to talk about the Kickstarter now. So, real quick, the overview of the game, so that you don't have to do it, Hannah, I'll do it. Damn the Man, Save the Music is a tabletop role-playing game about making a last-ditch effort to save something that you love. You get to play a ragtag group of underachievers, overachievers, street philosophers, and love-struck artists united by one cause: to rescue your record store from the oppressive hand of the man, and to keep the music playing all night and day long. So, Hannah, would you mind letting us know a little bit about, like, what do the characters in this game do, and like, what do the players do with them, and then maybe what does the facilitator of the game do?
Sure. Yeah, so if folks have played our games before, you'll notice that this is the first game that we've put out with a GM. We tend to make these like little weird GM-less games, so that is a departure. But of course, I'm not calling it a GM. I'm calling it the facilitator. Mm-hmm. So in the game, the characters have, like, today is the day to accomplish what in your mind is like your life goal. At least your teenage self's life goal. And you have to do it today for whatever reason. And of course, it's also this day when, like, the store is just going to totally fall apart. So that goal might be to confess your love to your crush finally. It might be to pay back a debt to your parents so you can finally move out of their house and, cast off the shackles of youth. It might be to find the store's lost cat. Whatever it is, you have to do it today. And while you're working up to accomplish this big, epic, emotional goal, you are also being assigned tasks from your boss that you have to accomplish in that minute. So that might be like picking up everybody's complicated coffee orders, which is like the most 90s thing ever. For some reason, everybody's like, every 90s joke is about complicated coffee orders. It might be appeasing the needs of the big shot, who is this has-been rock star who is doing a record signing in your store today. It might be apprehending a shoplifter. So you are trying to simultaneously accomplish your today's life goal. You're trying to get the coffee orders, and you're also trying to repair relationships with your friends in the process. And the game has mechanics for doing all these things. In the meantime, the facilitator is leading the players through those scenes. They're assigning the tasks. They're taking on the role of the boss and the big shot. And they're also helping the players figure out, like, when to roll and when is a good time to resolve the scene's action.
And this game actually has a something that I find many role-playing games don't have, which is when the game reaches its end state, you've either saved the store or you've not saved the store. So there's actually
don't. Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. Like, there's not very many role playing games that do things like that in my opinion, like that have that kind of end state that does that. Now, the only other one I can think of offhand is Our Last Best Hope. So. Yeah. James from One Shot Podcast described my game design as bleak but hopeful the other day, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Well, that's really good storytelling, really. I mean, the idea is that the bleaker it can be through the course of time, with as long as you maintain some semblance of hope, then people can stay interested and hopeful, assuming that the bleakness is not so pounding that it makes you lose interest in the story. Definitely, yeah, which is a risk. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, we'll get more into the game in a little bit. Let's talk about the Kickstarter levels for those people out there. So for $10, you can get the PDF. For $25, you can get the PDF and the soft cover. And then there's some other levels. What is one of your favorites? Oh, one of the favorite levels? All right. Well, I'm going to be a little bit of a corporate shill here. So I really like at the $65 level, it kicks into the box level, which is where you get this like awesome square record box, which has this really cool 90s throwback pattern designed by Sarah Robbins, who's this awesome artist that we're working with for the campaign. And in that box, you get the role-playing game book, you get cards, you get dice, you get, we're even going to throw in note cards and pencils. Like, basically, you just get everything you need to be able to, like, hit the ground running with the role-playing game without even having to break out your own gaming supplies. And they're going to be cool supplies. So, like, these aren't just your standard playing cards. They have, like, Damn the Man art on them. Nice. And then after that, at $125, you can get the box, and you can also design your own band to go in the game. Yeah.
And so I'm gonna like push that level a little harder because there aren't that many people who have bitten yet, but I'm really excited about that level. And you also get a poster designed by Sarah that is for this fictional riot girl punk band called Damster Fire. And I love the poster, and I love the idea that people can be contributing their own bands to this game. So I know it's got kind of a high price tag, but I want to see more people going in on those custom bands.
See, I know Phil is real interested in that level because he wants to put the ditch lilies.
The ditch
in there.
lilies. That's right. Senda and I invented.
Oh yeah, they're my favorite.
That's right. Senda and I invented the ditch lilies. I think at some point we had a document somewhere where we had the first 7 albums, but it's been a running joke. Like we'll be talking to each other, and I think one day she's like, "Oh, I have such a sugar rush right now." I'm like, "Yeah, that's actually the Ditch Lilies' 3rd album, Sugar Rush."
Yeah, but nobody talks about their 3rd album.
That's right.
Oh,
yeah,
that's funny. All right. Well, the campaign runs until July 20th. It's already beyond the funding goal, so that's awesome. Congratulations. I mean, it's also
Thank
it's like
you.
300% beyond the funding.
Well, and you
goal
have a
if I
few
looked.
stretch goals that have opened, right?
We do. Yeah. There are a number of stretch goal authors. Right now, we're working up towards Caitlin Bell's stretch goal. She's one of my favorite game designers. And then after that, we have Alex Roberts and Quinn Murphy. And
very
then
nice.
there are some stretch goals that are unannounced. Beyond to that.
And so, what are the stretch goals? What does stretch goals add to the game?
Yeah, so right now the stretch goals that we're unlocking are these fake band stretch goals, and we're going to also have a like Billboard magazine style supplement that most people will get it digitally. If you back at I think it's at the 125 level, you'll actually get like a magazine, and this will have like all of the stretch goals authors, bands. They'll all get album art. If you back at a really high level, you get your own album art, and we will ship you your album art framed.
That's awesome.
So you'll get to actually have this supplement at the table where you can flip through what's essentially, the hit songs of this alternate universe 1994. And, you can use those songs to reference your own, your character's favorite band in the game, etc.
This is one of those moments where I wish I was uber rich or just hit the lottery because I would drop a metric butt ton of money on this thing just to get a whole bunch of bands in there.
I see Senda's gone all caps.
You would just take over.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah, Senda's gone all caps in the chat room. She's a bit excited right now.
All right, so as I said, the campaign runs till July 20th. People, you should go out there and back this game for $10 or for many, many more dollars to get your own band in that magazine. Sounds pretty awesome.
Chat room for life. I think, a concerted effort to gather a bunch of money between us all so that we can have a chat room for life album name
If you want to
band
pool
name
your
contest.
resources to do chat room for life, everybody's favorite like weird grunge knockoff.
Oh, wow. That's actually not a bad idea. Hey,
Yeah.
folks, somebody organize that. Send it. You're there. Do something about that.
Oh,
Rob.
Rob. Yep, good job, Rob. I got some money for that. Okay. Well, let us move on then to the workshop and designing games genre into your games. Hannah, we grabbed your music. I hope you don't mind from your Dan the Man Save the Music Kickstarter to get this going on.
That's great.
So with Hannah on the show tonight, we thought, and Damn the Man being a game with a very period-focused setting, we wanted to talk about how we can use mechanics to inform and enforce genre. But before we jump into some questions with Hannah, we're going to give Phil his sure shot going to get some definitions for our discussion. Phil, what terms do we need to know for tonight?
yeah. Let's. I want to speed through these because I want to get to the fun part, the questions.
Then go quicker.
Yeah, here we go. So let's talk about genre. So a category of artistic, musical, or literary composition characterized by a particular style, form, or content. We've actually used this definition on a number of shows.
When we've talked about things like pulp or high fantasy or space opera or Cthulhian horror.
Exactly. Trope, figurative or metaphorical use of a word or expression.
So like superhero landing, knockback, slide, boss battle.
Yes. The setting, so the place, the type of surroundings where something is positioned, where an event takes place.
Often part of a trope too, so like a castle, a bridge of a spaceship, the world.
And mechanics, the rules of the game, including dice, tokens, things like that.
Yeah, combat mechanics, scene resolution mechanics, character creation, things like that.
That's the fastest we've ever done definitions. Good job, Chris.
So, designing genre into a game. The genre of a game can be expressed in a game in two places, setting and mechanics. So the setting, which we just talked a little bit about, is the genre is expressed in the NPCs, location, and events we write into the text of the game. In a fantasy game, we may create a battlefield, it could be beautiful, full of dragon skeletons, which are a remnant of the Great War of Man. In a sci-fi game, we may have an NPC who is a space junker. The existence of these things tell us about the world the game is set in. Then we can define tropes as part of the setting. For instance, we can have an illustration of someone doing a superhero landing as one of the pieces of artwork. This information is passed to the GM and players through the text of the rules and supplements.
We're all good on superhero landing, right?
Yeah, man.
Everybody got that from Deadpool, right?
Yeah. I hope so.
Some of us had it before Deadpool.
Do we need to pop-splain somebody right now?
No.
By the way, Hannah, sometimes we pop-splain people, which is when we make a reference to something that they don't get because they're either too young or they didn't know anything about it. Like, if you've never seen Army of Darkness, then we pop-splain what Army of Darkness is. And anybody can
like it.
Yeah, anybody can pop-splain anybody. That's the best part about it. So this thing that we're talking about, genre, it can be done actively. The game you are about to play is in a world of heroic adventure with knights and wizards. We've just explained what the genre is. But it can also be done passively. The people of this town, like most others, are weary of the wizards and their magic.
Yeah. So setting is definitely a way that we can convey genre, but so we can do the same thing with mechanics.
True.
So the types of mechanics that we include and do not include in a game will inform us about how the game's going to run. So, for instance, if we have 6 skills for social interaction and only 1 skill for physical conflict, then the game is leaning towards social interaction.
Correct.
As the type of play. Sadly, what we've seen over the
Uh-huh.
years is that it's like 13 types of weapon combat and 1 type of social interaction. But, So the presence of those rules tell us how the game's going to be played, which can also then help enforce genre. We can also put tropes in a mechanical sense. So we can create a feat for superhero landing and give it a rule that says, when you successfully perform your superhero landing, you knock down all mooks in a 15-foot radius.
Mm-hmm. So you're actually encouraging the trope with a mechanic.
Yeah, exactly.
Reinforcing the genre with mechanics.
Exactly. And so mechanics are more actively transmitted because we use them. Like we actually do them in the game. So they're not only active, but they're reinforcing. So it's important when you're designing to actually, and we're going to talk to Hannah about this in just a second, talk about how that's done through setting and through mechanics.
Yeah. And now that Hannah was very patient with us with our, not as lengthy as we thought it was.
No, that was good. It's a lot more text on the screen.
Because I was just like, let's just go.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how to design genre into a game. So, Hannah, based on your description before of Damn the Man, Save the Music, can we talk about genre and tropes? And I was hoping I could lead you through each one and have you talk about them. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Let's start with genre. Tell us about the genre of Damn the Man, Save the Music, which has something to do with, I feel like, emo teens and flannel.
Yeah. So, Damn the Man is not necessarily like a teen movie. I reference teenagers a lot because you can play as teenagers, but generally games also tend to have like that one sort of ornery person who's been working at the record store for like 20 years, who's in their late 40s.
It's Bob.
It's Bob.
On our show, we might have an older ornery person.
Do you work at a record store, Bob?
I could.
So, I would say that the genre of Damn the Man is, can 90s movie be a genre? Can like 90s sort of action comedy be a genre? I would say it's, 90s, like a certain type of montage-oriented, goofy 90s comedy marketed at young adults. That's a long genre. I'm really bad at that part.
No. I mean, I actually get it. Like, I have no problem picturing it. I think is
imagine. Empire Records, High Fidelity, which Clerks, Dazed and Confused.
Yep. Oh, so good.
So I can play all of those with this game. Now this game is far more interesting to me. I love Clerks, by the way. Great flick.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
And we won't talk about the other Clerk movie.
No, just the original.
Just the original.
Just the original.
It's too bad. I like Kevin Smith a lot too. Anyways, So yeah, that's the genre. Those are the kind of films and stories that we're talking about. What about the tropes? Like, what are some of the common tropes that are associated with these kinds of stories?
So I mean, one of them would be a montage. You'll see montages, and especially in this game, you'll get musical montages as part of the mechanics. So you get to actually have montages in the game. I mean, part of this game is also about turning some of the tropes that would be common in 90s movies on their head, because there were a lot of tropes that were really bad. So am I allowed to use language?
Yes.
What are your
yeah.
rules about
We are explicit. Okay. You have been warned.
Yeah.
So, it's like one of the tropes that you would see in a lot of 90s movies is like the alpha bitch. And that's sort of like when you get a lady boss who, everybody hates, and she's like this, powerful career woman, but it's just like all about her, being an unpleasant person through her success. So that's one trope that the game actively addresses. It basically says like, hey, if you've created a boss and you find your game moving in this direction, do something better. And it specifically goes through some common tropes that you might accidentally stumble into and says, don't do that. Another one might be, catty girl fighting, which, I mean, there's room for like catty fighting in the game, but when you have two women who are not interacting as people, they're only sort of like taking cheap shots at each other. That's a bad trope. So those are some examples. And, what are some other good 90s tropes? There's so many.
Well, you mentioned the coffee order before, right? Like
coffee order. Yeah, that's fine. The coffee order. I mean, one attending your own funeral is one of the sort of dramatic 90s, like, oh, you don't want to be dead. This is what it would be like if you were dead. So those are just a few that you might see in Damn the Man.
Like, if you don't mind me asking a follow-up question, how did you study up for that part of designing the game? Because part of what I would assume people are interested in is like, if you're going to design for genre, how do you go about studying for your genre aside from just watching the movies and taking notes? Like, how do you get to the point where you can actually discern all this stuff? Except for going for TV tropes.
I think you just yanked one of our questions from later. But
oh, did I? I was looking around for it.
Let's see how you do.
Should I wait then? Should I wait to?
Let's see. The chat room asked in advance, because I had them prep questions.
What if you like genre but not deeply familiar with the genre? So sorry about that. I went scrolling through to look for the questions. I didn't read the italics part.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
so it was foreshadowing.
Yeah, it's for.
That's what happens when I let Phil write the questions. I don't. I mean, I read them all.
Normally, Chris prepares interviews and Phil.
It just means that you guys are part of this like hive mind that works really well together.
A little bit, yeah.
We're drift compatible from the.
So I screwed that up. So why don't you just move on, because I screwed that up?
Yeah, that's fine. When Chris screws things up, we get to move on to Phil.
Totally sneeze at.
Yeah. So Hannah, so then how do you use the setting specifically to enforce the genre of the game? Like, how did you, like, in order to get that 90s feel, like, what did you do about describing the setting that, and it doesn't have to just be in words, but it can also be through the way the book's being made and art, etc. Like, how do you enforce that through setting?
Yeah. I mean, art is a good one. In this game, I'm also trying to make it sort of like this weird multimedia experience. So Damn the Man has its own song. And in terms of the game's mechanics and actually being at the table, the montages help to enforce the setting, because the facilitator will kind of set the scene, will describe, when the first montage opens up, the facilitator will talk about like the first person to arrive and them unlocking the door, and like, do you fumble for the key? Is the key under the mat? Does the boss trust you enough to give you the key? So it both helps to establish your character and also their connection to the setting. There used to be a mechanic where you all designed the store together, which was really cool, but it is only like a 2-hour game. So that added like an hour to a 2-hour game.
Nice. And so for the montage, is there a mechanical component, or is that more of a narrative thing, just to kind of like get everybody focused?
I would say it's more of a narrative thing. It also kind of helps to pace out. The game works in a 3-act structure. And so, if I was going to... I'm trying to think about how to say this. Mechanics and story I think really support each other. So
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
mechanics are the montage is not necessarily like explicitly mechanical, but it kind of acts as this story beat to open each new scene, which does feel like a mechanic to me. So does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because it's a procedural beat that you have in your game.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
I'm gonna let Chris ask his question because it kind of dovetails right into.
Oh
this.
yeah, so I was wondering, are we talking about the understanding the difference or the examples?
Yeah, like the mechanical examples.
Yeah, sure. I really just want to talk about this thing for a second, though, Hannah, because you're a game designer. I feel like these things are fascinating. Like what you just said is a thing that I've been kind of beating on and thinking about and harping on lately, is this idea of flow of play and how mechanics interact with story. And that goes back to interact with or narrative, I should say, to go back to interact with mechanics. And I feel like most of the flow of a role-playing game should be your narrative leads into a mechanic which leads back out into your narrative, and then mechanisms, they are either the rolling of the dice or things like that, but there can also be procedural beats like you're talking about. Like, this is a 3-act game, this is a structured play game, and between each of our scenes or between each of our acts is a montage, so that's a delineated point, like I said, a story beat that is going to be brought up in play. So like when you constructed this game, did you do that with that in mind? Like, did you just like deconstruct movies and figure out how they work that way, and then just figure out the outline for people to follow, or how did that go together? Maybe if you could give some other examples of mechanics in this game and how they help pace out the play.
Sure. So, I mean, there's a few parts to this. So this is a hack of Questlandia, our game about collapsing kingdoms. It's a pretty deep hack, though. Like, it doesn't use the same dice system at all, although it used to. So, Questlandia has this 3-act structure where you are sort of gearing up to accomplish a personal goal that could potentially change the course of your entire kingdom. So it sort of started as a joke where, I was thinking about the 3-act structure of Questlandia and these collapsing kingdoms. And I don't know if I was watching Empire Records, but I was like, gosh, this is like one of those movies where everything starts to fall apart. Everybody has to accomplish a big personal goal. This is like kind of like Questlandia. And so started to kind of hack it. And, it's like there's a back and forth. Like I test some mechanics. They don't feel at all like the story that I want to tell. So then I go back to the movie and I'll watch the movie and take notes and pause every few seconds and like really, really map out what I'm watching in an outline. So I did that with Empire Records. I did that with Dazed and Confused and pulled the elements that I wanted from those movies. Then I went back to the table again and tried to see how I could translate those into mechanics, and then just go back and forth with those until suddenly I have a game. Just like that. It's very easy.
Yeah, just a long time consuming process.
Piece of cake.
And I'm not sure if I think I may have gotten off track for part of your question. So was that a helpful answer at all? I think you wanted examples.
I mean, that was a good example of how you designed the game.
Cool. Yeah.
Which is
Just go
great.
back and forth and then you'll have a game.
Yeah. So what are some of the mechanisms that you did use in the game?
Yeah. So let's see. Some of the mechanisms are every relationship starting off damaged is both a story point and a mechanic. Because to get help in scenes, you have to have healed relationships. So that is a mechanic that both incentivizes having people in your scenes in a way where you're having moments of connection so they can come back and help you later mechanically. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's something we struggled with a lot in this game. Like, how do you have multiple people in scenes and also keep the spotlight on a character? How do you mechanically incentivize emotions without, I don't know, somebody trying to like min-max a feelsy scene? So that's one mechanic that I feel like supports the story.
That's great because it reinforces the genre. It gives people something to shoot at as a story beat that isn't just like you should be telling the story this way. Like, it actually provides a reason to go after it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think of that as being just good design. And I always feel like if you were going to, if you want people, if people are going to power game your game, you want them to power game your game and play the game well. Like that.
A power game, like lean into the mechanics.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. What else?
So another one is you can shoot for your goal in the game. And in early iterations, I didn't want people shooting for their goal too early because if it's a 3-act game and you find the cat in the first scene, it feels a little anticlimactic. Like you want this sort of 90s movie, everything comes together at the same time in the third act. It's perfect. Like there's all this synchronicity. But it also felt weird to set that sort of arbitrary guideline of like, no, you can't go for your goal until Act 3. And I was also having this problem where players were forgetting what their goal was because it didn't come up early enough in the game. So it changed it to you can shoot for your goal anytime, but when you shoot for your goal, it requires more dice. Those dice you get by shooting for your goal and failing, essentially. So it ended up really supporting this 90s movie mechanic of like, okay, I'm going to go confess my love. And I totally failed this time. All right, but next time I'm going to get it right. Or like, I'm going to go find the cat, and the cat got away from me at the last minute. So that's one that I actually am proud of. And it ended up working out really nicely where like, go for it. Try to accomplish your goal. Probably you'll fail, but it'll give you this power for when you finally do get it right.
You just built the try-fail cycle into role-playing games, which is a really hard thing to do.
And it doesn't work every time. Like sometimes you will shoot for your goal and get it, but it also rewards the players who really just want to find the cat in the first scene.
Yeah.
And for those players who are that dedicated, I assume that at that point they have the sort of like role play prowess to find their own fun throughout the rest of the game, and they can help their friends and stuff. So,
well, I love the two things that you need to have to really be successful at shooting for your goal. So you need to be determined, and you need to have a plan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those are the two check boxes that you're striving to get, because you get bonus dice for them.
If you're determined and you don't have a plan, if you have a plan but you're not determined, you need both.
So those are those narrative beats that you have to hit so that you can get the dice, which is great. And then you have this really nifty, it is a variable try-fail cycle. Like you could get it on the first try, but you said as you fail, you get more dice later.
Yep. Yeah.
In later scenes. So that is that is impressive. Like I haven't seen that yet before. I'm thinking about it.
That's clever. I like it.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Thank you.
I haven't read the game. Phil read the game. So,
I did. Well, and it's cool because that shooting for your goal then also kind of ties in with healing your, fixing your relationships, and so it's really like they all just like really flow together. They flow together really nicely.
So we're just going to borrow some of your stuff for some of the games that we make. Okay.
Oh, steal it. Yeah.
Thanks.
That would be flattering and wonderful.
Like the shoplifter in the store, just like open up the coat and just slide those mechanics, tuck them right in there.
Well, we're Senda's designing a Magical Girls game, and we're also kicking around the idea of a Magical Women game.
Yes.
Which is like what happens to the magical girls when they age out and they have problems. So
that sounds awesome.
That relationship mechanic where you start off all broken, that's perfect for that game.
Oh yeah, that is really good.
Take it. Yeah.
I'm not supposed to design any more games right now. I'm supposed to finish designing one.
We're just putting stuff in the slot in the backpack to pull out later.
That's right.
All right. Do you want to go to the chat room for life and see what people have to say?
They're busy in there.
They're
fundraising right now.
We're fundraising because we are determined that we are going to pledge to this Kickstarter and get Sneezak and the Hard Moves into this game.
So, Hannah, there's a story behind that I suppose I should tell you. So, I got married in Mexico, and Phil and Bob were there, and there's a picture of... We were all in khaki or
So Chris's requirement was like, come to Mexico for this wedding, and I was like, great. I'm like, what are we wearing? Because it's like Mexico in July. Like I'm gonna die.
Yeah. So we're all wearing basically white khaki-ish type shorts.
Yes.
Yeah.
A blue shirt of some sort.
Yes.
Like t-shirt, and then white dress shirts like over top of that opened up. And there was a picture of us
at the beach.
At the beach,
because you were married right at the beach.
So
there's a picture of us lined up, like all the groomsmen and Chris, at the beach, and it is the most 90s boy band cover.
It's glorious.
Yeah.
So do you
I'm looking at it right now.
In the game?
We kind of. I think that's what that's what the chat room's angling for right now.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Well, I'm going to send it to you in just a second because we'll do this in real time, But Senda took the picture and then made an album cover out of it.
That says Sneezak and the Hard Moves. It's pretty good. Because we're such Powered by the Apocalypse fans around here, and we love hard moves.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's our story as we dovetailed into the chat room for life. I guess we'll just jump back out and go
Yeah.
into questions again.
Do they have anything else going on? I mean, they've been really busy fundraising.
No, that's
They're-
been the focus. It's
Rob Abrazato is taking the
Yep.
taking the lead on this.
Rob,
Yeah, Rob.
that's amazing. Go, Rob.
I will find some money, either misdirected mark wise or not, for this. So, Phil, do you want to ask the next question? Or are you busy?
You asked the net. You can jump in. I'm
Sure.
sending Hannah Sneezek in the hard moves.
Sounds good. So, this is a question from the chat room for life. So, if you like a genre but are not deeply familiar with the genre, ideally, of course, you find everything related to that genre and immerse yourself, but maybe you can't. Are there any suggested shortcuts for studying genre?
Oh, that's interesting. Any shortcuts for studying genre? Okay. So I feel like there are sort of two ways to take this. The first would be whether the question is like, how can I enjoy a game without feeling like I have a lot of context for the genre?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if we're talking about Damn the Man specifically, which I selfishly will because that is what we're talking about tonight. I've with this game, I've really tried to build in a lot of mechanisms for folks so you don't have to know anything about the genre to come in. And it's a little hard because I both want to pitch the game to the right people, and then I wince a little bit when somebody's like, oh no, Empire Records, I didn't like that movie, so that game isn't for me. And I'm like, I don't think that's quite right. Like, I don't want to lose that person because they didn't like that particular movie, because I think that this game is emulating something that they could like. So I think this is clearly a question that I'm still struggling with. Genre shortcuts. I don't know if I have an exact answer to that.
Well, I would start, if it was me, with TV tropes. That's always the easiest.
That's the first answer I was going to give. TV Tropes is really fun. It's such a fun site.
And set a timer, because you'll forget to come out of it.
Oh my God. Yeah, it is a never-ending rabbit hole.
Yeah, it just goes on and on and on. Although the genre, this 90s-ish movie, as we just tried to describe it earlier, it's a hard one to pin down.
It is and it isn't, because
I mean, you really.
I guess it helps because I was in college in the 90s, so it's like really rooted for me. Like I had all that flannel, like I drank that coffee, like I know those record stores. Like there was one in my college hometown, like my college town.
It was the end of my it was my high school years, so yeah. So I was a teenager in the 90s.
Right. So it's so it's not hard for me to picture. Like as soon as I read it, I was like, oh no, I totally get this game. Like, but that's because I was there.
Because I mean, it is a kind of a tricky genre to pin down as far as like naming it and like identifying it, because like when you said Clerks, I mean, it came more into focus for me, because it's not just it's about people with relationships having conversations. I mean, that's the kind of stories that we're talking about, right? Just regular everyday people having conversations about life.
Yeah, and this, I would say that Damn the Man Save the Music is less when I say Clerks is meandering, I mean that in a really flattering way, because I love Clerks, and I love sort of meandering talky movies. But is Clerks the meandering? I'm also thinking Slacker is the other one that I'm thinking of, by Richard Linklater, which is a very sort of talky, meandering movie. And Damn the Man, I think, is a little bit more structured, but some of that is also just sort of because you need to have some structure to move a role-playing game along, or at least the type of role-playing game that you can bring to Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense to. I mean, the Empire, of all those movies that you mentioned before, the ones that I'm familiar with and aware of, because you said Dazed and Confused, that's another one of those meandery, talky movies, right? Like, it's just about those kids and their life and them, and they're sort of like them moving on from high school, like their next steps, I guess, or they're dealing with the fact that they're moving on from high school. So, I mean, that genre of film, because, I mean, like you said, Empire Records has more of a structure than that, because there's actually like a problem that they're all dealing with, but it's still that same idea. Like the relationships are really the thing, and them dealing with those relationships. So that is it's a tricky genre to nail down.
Well, and meandering's actually, I think meandering doesn't really work in a game that you're handing out, like that you're just selling to people. Like if it's a game
It's
you're
tough,
running,
yeah. Yeah.
because meandering, like for meandering to work, I mean, the reason why Clerks works is the directing on it. It does such a good job of threading that, that story, that even though it meanders, like it goes somewhere.
Yeah, and the camera knows where to cut, whereas in a role-playing game, that's a little hard to pre-script.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Like a really good GM can pull off that meandering thing, with almost on instinct, but it's not going to be something that's universally translatable.
Well, yeah, because it seems like Damn the Man Save the Music has this overarching structure where you're still trying to save a thing that you love. So if Clerks had the idea that you're trying to save the mini mart,
Right.
then it becomes a less meandering movie, and you can still have all that stuff, but then there's a thing that goes along with it. I mean, I don't know what... I mean, I suppose you could just skin Dazed and Confused to being Save the Prom. I don't know. I'm kicking stuff out here now, Hannah. You can disagree with me or tell me I'm crazy.
Say that again?
I said Dazed and Confused. You could skin it to being like Save the Prom or Save something about the high school, what's going on with it. I mean, it seems like you have that thing because you have those relationships, so you can have those talky, meandering points, but then you also have a structure to follow because they're trying to save something.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. I mean, Dazed and Confused. Well, I think one of the reasons why I sort of stumbled on that question about like where can you shortcut your own genre enjoyment, or can you how do you like study up really quickly? Is that there's genre and then there's tone.
Uh-huh.
And I know this is when we kickstarted Noirlandia, we had a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people who were like, oh, I just don't get into noir. And there's like a lot of stuff that is noir that you don't necessarily know is noir if you associate noir with like a guy with a bowler hat or like a fedora and
Yes.
a trench coat and like a woman smoking a long cigarette. Like noir is about these stories of like hopelessness in cities that consume you. And if you think about noir in that way, there may be a lot of noir you can enjoy.
Oh,
so
man. I just want... we had John Adamus on the show when he was kickstarting Noir World. I just kind of want you two to sit here and talk about noir because Adamus had some feelings about noir, and I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and disagree with him, but they weren't exactly the same feelings that I have about noir because in my studies of noir, it's a lot of what you said, but it's also a tone, right? Like... I mean, if you just look at the classic like Black Noir or where it comes from, the French movie, it's about those stark colors and a kind of feel. But it's also that a lot of the stories they tend to be crime dramas and things like that, but they don't have to be. They can be more than that. And they're usually about normal people stuck in impossible situations that are oftentimes not of their own choosing.
Yeah. So when I think about Damn the Man, also when I think about 90s movies, like there are some 90s movies, I would not say that Damn the Man is like American Pie.
No.
Some people might group 90s like, oh, comedic 90s movies, it must be like American Pie. And it's not, because it has a different tone.
No, I mean the thing that I remember from actually being that age in that time, there very much was this this Damn the Man kind of thing. Like there was a point when I was considering what to do after grad school, where it was like, should I go teach, or could I go work for like a big pharma company? Because my actual degree, which I never got, was in biochemical pharmacology, and part of that was like no, like I don't want to be a corporate shill. Like I don't I don't want to go work for a big corporation. I want to I want to teach, and like I want academic freedom and not profit margins and stuff like that. And I mean that was very much a tone like I remember in the 90s, and it was, I mean that was one of those things. So like that's why like that's one of those things the game hits for me tone wise, is this idea that this soulless record store is going to buy out, your, real earthy, grassroots, this store that's been around and full of all these old records kind of thing. And they're going to replace it all with, shiny CD cases of only, like bubblegum chewing pop stars.
Yeah, well, let's talk about tone for a second because, I mean, Damn the Man Save the Music, it's got a lot of music in it. Like music is an important thing, and music is a great tone setter. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to be playing Damn the Man Save the Music, what's the playlist that you think are like the top 5 songs that would be identifiers for Damn the Man Save the Music?
Oh yeah. Well, we will have playlists that we're making. So during the campaign, we have some social stretch goals, and those social stretch goals involve people sharing some of their favorite '90s songs with us, which we're adding to YouTube and Spotify playlists that then are going to be linked on our website. So
Nice.
I don't even know if I can answer that question now because there will just be these awesome playlists that have been created collaboratively by backers. And if we get up to 20 songs, we'll also unlock a new character. So that's exciting. The character is called the Wizard. But I mean, there are, the 90s had so much awesome music. So I'm a little hesitant to suggest one song as iconic because like there are the songs that are iconic to a movie like Empire Records that are like maybe a little like sort of indie grungy, but that's a movie that like totally ignored hip hop entirely. And there was amazing hip hop coming out in the 90s. So
There really
I
was.
cannot answer that question with just one song.
Well, then maybe we let me see if I can re-ask it in a way that won't pin you down.
Sure.
When you play test the game, what are some of the songs that you put in the playlist that you use?
Oh yeah. Okay. That's easier. I'll go through some genres. So some genres, like if you were looking for genres that kind of exemplify the 90s that are not genres that are really, I don't want to say really popular anymore. But genres where like the 90s were the like golden era of that genre. There's G-funk, or like gangster rap is another term you'll hear for G-funk. There's neo soul is another genre that you can look up. There's of course, there's grunge, which I think is the one that most people think about when they think 90s. There's the genre that we're calling sincere women with pianos and guitars, like Tori Amos or Alanis Morissette, maybe a little Sarah McLachlan. So those are some of the artists and genres that you might hear. Oh, there's Britpop was another one. So you have like Oasis. Would that be a Brit? Yeah.
Yeah. Robbie Williams, right?
Would that be considered Britpop?
I always thought
it's not one on my list, but we could add it to the community playlist.
I would probably put him in there. Yeah.
I mean, I love listening as far as the G-funk stuff, like Dre and Snoop Dogg.
Oh yeah, well, I mean
man.
the 90s Sonic comes out.
Tupac, California Love.
Yeah. Oh, California Love. I love that
Yeah,
song.
man, like all that stuff. So good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's.
I know. I fell into that rabbit hole for a second. That's really good.
No, it's cool. Let's go back to the chat room. They have another question. So they asked, I'm interested in learning how to use mechanics to support going beyond the tropes of the game. Tropes feel, at least for me, very surface level and can cause one game system to feel just like another. I'm not sure what you would call what lies beyond underneath the tropes that would give the game a great feel of authenticity. What is the best approach to that feeling with mechanics? And I think we've already explored some of this, talking about structure and whatnot, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so, some of it is just being aware of the tropes. I think that if you're going to design a game in a genre, you have to realize that you are going to be probably even subconsciously pulling from like so many genre tropes, because how could you not? Like if you're like, I want to design a game that, I don't know, give me something that's popular that hopefully I know, and I'll try to think of a few tropes.
Oh, I'll go Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks. Okay. Yeah. If you're like, I want to design a game like Twin Peaks, probably you will have owls, and probably you'll have some coffee, and maybe you'll have people speaking backwards. These are actually cool tropes. I'm thinking of terrible examples. Oh, you might want to have dead women everywhere. That's a bad trope. And that's one that David Lynch really loves. So like being aware of the tropes and being like, does my game need dead ladies everywhere? Or is that a trope that I'm leaning into where maybe I could do better and sort of, turn that trope on its head? So I think that sometimes just keeping the genre awareness around those tropes is a great way to get to some of the essential qualities of the genre that you may have, you just had to go a little deeper.
Yeah,
dig a little deeper.
tropes are the building blocks of genre. It's cliche that we want to kind of avoid when we're doing this stuff, right?
But yeah, I mean, tropes can be really great for capturing the feeling of your game. So they can be really great and they can be really important. And I think just like knowing what they are is really important.
Yeah, and if you're gonna, like you mentioned before, how you were designing like those relationships, how they start out broken. Like that is a trope of the genre that we're talking about when it comes to Damn the Man Say the Music. People with broken relationships, and then having to like make those things better because there's a mechanical impetus to do it that makes the trope feel less arbitrary and more practical to what's going on with the play of the game.
Mm-hmm. And like we were talking about TV tropes, if you want to design the Twin Peaks role playing game or a Star Wars inspired role playing game, like go to TV tropes and look up the tropes associated with that movie, and you may be surprised that some of the things that you were designing into your game are even considered tropes.
Mm-hmm.
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 And I think the other thing that we kind of touched on was we also talked about tone, which I think is the thing that also happens underneath the tropes.
Yeah, man, tone's a thing that a lot of people don't think about with role-playing games, but it's because it's not always the easiest thing to push forward.
Well, and not every role-playing game emphasizes a particular tone. I mean, D&D doesn't have a particular tone.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, it has a set of activities that you perform, but not really a tone. But I mean, then there are other games that are very much dialed in to produce, a specific tone.
Yeah. It's like old school D&D has a tone, and so does DCC. Like they're deadly, and DCC's a little wacky, right?
It's lots of dice, and you're gonna die.
Yeah, Paranoia has a tone that's a set with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, Paranoia. I mean, getting in Phil's Wayback Machine. Like even the first editions of Paranoia did a fantastic job of conveying tone to the GM, because that game was like, I mean, I was 7th or 8th grade when I got my first copy of Paranoia. Mm-hmm. That game is unlike anything I had seen at that point. Like, I had seen ads in Dragon Magazine. I ordered a box set and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, it's Looney Tunes compared to every other role-playing game you've ever played.
It's accurate. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it was hilarious. Like, once we got the hang of it, like, once we got the tone of it, and that was one. And so I'm going to bring this back to Damn the Man in a second. The text for the GM, because the text for the PC was like blatantly sparse and mean, like, because that's how the game is. But when you crossed over to the GM side, there was a lot of advice, because there's not too many rules to Paranoia. There was a lot of advice about how to make, not only how to enforce the tone, but it also told you how to kind of structure adventures. Mm-hmm. And so to bring it back to Damn the Man, having read through the rules, Hannah, one of the things I love that you do in the game is like, it's not only do you give like a great script that you can go from, and it's not even a script, it's just like an outline, like here's how to go through the game, and even tells you like, here's a good place to stop, like, and pause. But there are these great sidebars where Hannah just talks to you, which is the thing I love, right? Like,
oh, I'm glad you like those. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to keep them in the final version.
Oh no, please do, because as a consumer of games and as a designer, like, I've done it in games and stuff that I've designed where I just put a sidebar in and say like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, there's no mystery or magic here. Like, this is why this is here. Or, hey, don't do that. Like, your thing about the boss was great. Like, I was reading through it, and then like, I get through the next page and there's this box in its hand is like, don't do this. Like, and I was like,
don't do the alpha bitch.
Right. Yeah. And I was like,
you can do better.
Right. Like, that's really good. Like, and it's not worded in like generic game rules speak. It's Hannah says ... Yeah, no, don't take that out at all. Keep those in there. I think they're fantastic.
Please do. I actually
Hannah says go get some snacks. Yeah.
I every time I try to, I'm writing for other people, I try to talk directly to the game master or facilitator in the text that I'm writing, and the editor tells me to not do that, I get mad.
Yeah. I mean, we have a thing.
It's like you're like missing out on modern game design.
Right. Like, we have a thing here at Misdirected Mark, and then here at Encoded Designs, like, we talk, the phrase we use for that is weaponizing the game master. Like, we want you to run this game, and we're going to do everything in our power to tell you
what we intended,
so that you can, so that you're not having to feel your way through it.
Yeah.
So, moving on, this is not the first version of Damn the Man Save the Music. The first time we heard the game, it was on She's a Super Geek in March of 2016. What has changed from a design perspective since then?
Yeah. So, I've gone through so many different versions that it's like a little hard to remember, but I remember that the version that I ran on She's a Super Geek still uses the Questlandia dice system, or some version of it, which if folks aren't familiar with that, it's this system where you roll like a pool of dice against each other, and then based on whether your dice are higher or the oppositions are higher, you can use those to sort of buy narrative results. So a 6 might mean that winning on a 6 might mean that you heal a relationship. Losing on a 6 might mean you damage a relationship with a friend. It's kind of a wacky system, and it's getting overhauled when we do our second edition of Questlandia. So it was just a system that was a little bit. It's hard for a game that I wanted to be just like a 2-hour game or a maximum 3-hour game, because the system takes so long to resolve. Each scene takes a long time to resolve. I think that system also had something where you could buy these moments. Those moments were things like sex in the broom closet or pot brownies, and those are really fun. And I think that they're still in the game. They're just threaded in a different way.
Oh, okay.
I think the GM can sort of lead you to choose moments like that now, based on scene suggestions. Still trying to figure out a way to like get those moments back a little bit more, because I want people having sex in the broom closet. That's awesome.
That is pretty awesome, actually.
We need more pot brownies.
I was gonna say we need more pop brownies. Yeah, absolutely.
All around.
So, do you have any follow-ups of that, Phil? Or are we moving on to the last one?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the last question is the follow-up to that.
Sure, do it up.
Yeah.
So during the design process, we are often told to kill our darlings.
Yeah, I answered this question a little too early, didn't I?
Yeah. So what was a mechanic that you really loved, and then were like, oh, I'm taking it out. It's just not working for the rest of the game.
Because you obviously didn't take out the mechanic you just talked about. You just slid it in somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it is in there in different ways, but it's not in there in a way where you will see a list that has sex in the broom closet, and you'll know from the very beginning of the game that like that might be something you want to angle for. So I think that that's probably still the example I'll use for killing our darlings. The moments were something that people really loved. You look at them and you get that genre and tone. Like you look at that list and you see that sex in the broom closet's something you can do, that pot brownies, record scratch was another one of those. Like you could buy a record scratch moment. They were really, really fun, and they really helped to set a lot of tone, but they were just like such a mess. So they have been sort of killed, and we'll see. Before the game comes out, I may just have like a lot of lists to support both players and GMs of the types of things that they might want to do in a game, and I might just put them in a list in a totally like non-mechanical way.
Well, Hannah, we ran out of questions. There are no more.
Great. I guess great. These are good questions. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Phil does a very good job coming up with this stuff. Well, to close this thing out, we just wanted to touch on the Kickstarter again. It goes until July 20th. And it's already funded, like we said. We already talked about the levels you can get at before. We are currently fundraising. So if you want to be in on that, folks out there in listener land, just find Rob Abrazato. I'm pretty sure he's going to start a thread in the G Plus community.
The chat room has gone ballistic.
They're like coming up with song names and...
Well, I think they're recovering all the song names from...
last year, July?
Yeah, from last July, from the Sneezak and the Hard Moves album.
And, I will say, if anybody wants to, if you really want to like pull your resources to buy in at that art level, and multiple people are going to buy in, we will totally send you all a print. Like you will all get an art print.
Oh, wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we put that level, it's at, I think it's $500 or something. Like it's a lot of money, and we put it high enough to make sure that we could like make decisions like that. So yeah, totally.
Ooh, that's a very exciting thing.
Yeah, I think the wheels are turning in everybody's minds now in the chat room.
Yeah, the chat room's gone like all capital letters. Like it's it's they're getting really rambunctious in there tonight.
You will all get the art print.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement going on in there.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much for answering questions for us.
Thank you.
Is there any questions in the chat room, or are they just going nuts?
We've been just going back and forth on the Sneezak and the Hard Move stuff, and bands that were around in the 90s that that we're remembering as reminiscing and stuff.
Nice.
So yeah.
I did mention to them real quickly that I spent a semester locked in a windowless humid 60-degree lab injecting fruit fly embryos, listening to nothing but Sublime and who is it that did Semi
We
Charm
don't
Life?
practice Santeria.
Oh, that's Third Eye Blind.
Thank you. And Third Eye
Oh
Blind.
boy,
I had
it was
like
a rough summer.
yeah, I had those two CDs in a like CD Walkman, and like that was like my summer, was like injecting fruit fly embryos with like fine glass needles and listening
So
to.
you must have like really weird associations when you hear those songs now.
I do. I do. I joke about this because I think I've said it a few times in the show, but having worked in a fruit fly lab for 3 years, even to this day, like 15 years later, if a fruit fly lands on like counter or something, I'm like, oh, that's a female.
And
Like
then the
you can,
Barry White starts.
I could totally tell the difference
my
between
God.
male and female fruit flies.
That's
Still,
bizarre. Okay,
Well-
so we have a burning question here.
Oh, here
that
we go.
Nobody has an
Yeah.
answer to. And Emily is losing her mind. Is finding cats a 90s trope?
Oh, no. How did Finding Cats? I think, we had all these goals for characters, and they were really, they were all sort of intense, like confessing your love, and some of them have changed. I know I use the same examples over like again and again, and it's just habit because the game has changed so many times. So, confessing your love, paying back a debt, getting a promotion is one, scoring a gig. And I don't remember how Find the Cat made it into the game, but since it has made it into the game, there's a character archetype called the Space Case. Any game that you have with a space case, their goal will always be to find a cat. It's just like that goal was just made for the space case. So the
Right.
player who picks the space case always wants to find the cat. So I'm really glad that it's in the game.
I have a thing like that baked into Hydro Hackers now. There was a thing that came up in playtesting, and like ever since it came up in playtesting, actually like 2 or 3 things that have come up in playtesting where like, nope, those are like now part of the game. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, those are fun. I love when those things kind of come up and then they just get and no one else
just
really
gel.
understands why, but they get baked into the game because somebody said
yep.
it at the table.
Speaking of baked into things, this is not really a good transition. We're going to go to the social media depository now.
Wow.
Okay.
Well,
Nice segue.
Wow, when you segue like
Very
that.
natural transition.
These are like some of my worst segues ever, man.
Yeah, that
Like,
was-
I'm having a bad day with these. I'm usually much better than that. Okay,
That
anyways.
segue had 2 wheels.
No.
All right, so welcome to the social media depository. First things first, let's talk about the Get Healthy section. So Hannah, we do this thing where we for a while last year, for 6 months, we did a weight loss challenge with the community, and we lost a bunch of weight altogether. That was really cool. And then from then on, we just started talking about ways to just live healthier, and with
That's awesome.
letting the community like contribute and tell about their stories and things like that. So JJ Lanza, who is a friend of the show, and we hung out with him at Origins. So he's into the MyFitnessPal and the weight loss challenge and all that, and the staying healthy stuff. And he's using MyFitnessPal to keep track. And he had a rough weekend drinking beer and overeating, but then he went for a 90-minute walk on Sunday, and he had a net weight gain of 0, so he's staying level, which is good.
Yep.
But he's looking for people that want to join him on MyFitnessPal because you can make friends.
I friended him.
Yeah, there you go. So,
So did I.
I'm up 2 pounds post Origins and Con Drop because I chocolated my way through part of my
Chuck, your
Con
way
Drop.
through Con-Drop.
Well, here's wisely, Bob and I stopped at Grandpa's Cheese Barn on the way out of Origins, and I bought like a half pound of fudge and then just like doled it out. I figured it's the correct amount. When the fudge runs out, I'm done con dropping. Like it took me like 4 days to get through it, and I was like, okay, well, there's no more fudge. You have to stop being sad now. Like,
Oh, there you go.
You want to know what's remarkable? There is still a little piece of fudge at my house and like 3/4 of a thing of Buckeyes.
you still got
Those mini
how
Buckeyes, I
does not-
still have most
Well,
of
how
them.
do they not wind up here?
I don't know.
I mean, if they wind up here, I'm going to eat one of them. So that's
They're
a problem.
tiny, man. They're like
They're wee
they're not
Buckeyes.
like not regular Buckeyes. They're little.
So-
anyway,
Let's talk about. We didn't talk about Con Drop last week, did we?
no, because I think I hadn't completely dropped.
Yeah.
by-
Let's talk a little bit about Con Drop and how to combat it. So
yeah.
I don't really suffer from it as much anymore because going to conventions is like a job because it's my job. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just
I
working.
still get it though. Like, I mean, it's still a job for me, but it's any amount of game running that I do. Like, if I do any kind of sustained amount of game running, because it's that flow state thing, then when that stops and kind of like the chemicals that go with it stop, Like the whole thing just bottoms out.
Yeah, man, my brain is still working on the same level when I'm in front of my computer at home to and doing all the stuff that I'm doing to going to a convention. It's slightly different, but that's like the first time I worked in a booth too. And then I came back, and then I was still I went right back at it because I didn't have any time to worry about it.
In the past, my con drops were a little shorter, and we used to before I knew that there was an actual name for it. We used to, on our way home from Gen Con, we would call it re-entry. Like having to go back into the real world was just like too much to bear.
Yeah.
But I noticed it last year at Dreamation, because that's actually where Hannah and I actually got to meet, was at Dreamation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I had a con drop after Dreamation. Like I came out of Dreamation, and for like a day or two, I was just like in a total funk.
So Hannah, how do you deal with con drop?
Yeah, I get con drop in a different way because I consider myself an introvert extrovert or extrovert introvert, where I seem like an extroverted person and I'll really like push and push to make it so. And then after a convention, I have my introvert crash. So after conventions, I actually often find myself really relieved to be home, but I definitely still have that re-entry period. I do silly things like before I leave for a convention, I like make my house look really nice. So it feels good to come back to it. Sometimes, I'll leave something out for myself. Evan, my partner, has these really funny things that he does to like motivate himself to get up early in the morning. Like he'll leave $1 out for himself on the table to be like, yeah, there's $1 out there. So, little stuff like that to make home feel like a really great place to be. That's one of my strategies. But often my crash is more of a like a happy to not be on anymore crash. So just getting sleep. Trying not to get sick.
Being away from people for a little while.
Yeah, and then there's the fear of the con crud, right? Like the clock starts ticking and you're like watching Twitter. Like I think it was from Origins, it was PK Sullivan. Like all of a sudden, like 2 days later, there's a tweet from him and he's like, "Why does my tea taste funny?" And I'm like, in my head, like I'm remembering like all the games I played with him, and I'm like, oh no. Like yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for sharing that, and that's a good tip for you folks out there. Make your house look nice, so that
make
you have
it
something.
Look nice.
Yeah, so you have something to look forward to coming home to.
Yes, make your bed before you leave.
Yeah, leave $1 out for yourself on your bed.
That's great. Okay, let's talk about a little industry news. So, Fantasy Flight Games, they have decided to put out a generic system using their Star Wars rules called Genesis. So that narrative dice system, there's a book that is coming out that has that plus 5 little settings inside of it. And I feel like that's just the precursor to things like the Android role playing game.
Oh yeah.
And the Arkham Innsmouth whatever role playing game.
Yeah.
Like here we go.
But I'm okay with that. I mean,
me too.
I like that. I like that system. I like that system. I'll be really curious to see how they strip it down a little to make it generic, and then what it's like once it's a generic game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just changing the skill list. I mean, all the dice things are the same. I mean, you get rid of the force powers.
Well, I mean, if you're a generic game, you may need to put in some sort of generic magic system.
No, there's a fantasy
power
setting
system
inside of it. So.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, which is going to inspire us to do the mechanics episode, which we haven't done yet, the Read the Tea Leaves episode.
Yeah, we should probably do that at some point. Yeah.
Right. Games that have Read the Tea Leaf mechanics.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
Because that game is very much a read. I mean, that Star Wars game is very much a read the tea leaves.
So I was talking to Drew Smith, who grew up on the show, about it earlier today, and we were talking about the art inside of it, which is really clever because it's all sketch art.
Yeah,
like it's not quite finished type sketch art. I'm like, that's a real. I mean, who would expect anything less from Fantasy Flight Games and the creative people there with their clever art directors and whatnot to have something like that? But it is giving that feel of here is a game that you can customize to yourself. It's not quite finished.
Yeah,
that's a brilliant idea, actually.
Yeah,
I'm actually very, very curious about how this game gets implemented. It looks, I mean, it's now on my radar. It comes out Q4. The product page is already up. It's $39.95 for the book and $15 for dice. A little on the high side, but
I already got the dice.
Well, if you got the Star Wars dice,
I got 2 sets of them.
I don't know if they're exactly the same or if they're a little different.
They changed them a little.
They're close enough.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still the same.
Just
symbols.
be wary with those specialized dice if you share them, Senda.
Yeah.
Don't put your finger in your mouth.
Put your finger in your mouth.
If I'm not mistaken, they have an app too, which they can easily then
the app's free.
change the app up to have more generic-y.
Yeah, Hannah Senda did that at the end of Gen Con last year. We were playing in a Star Wars game, and she was playing Mon Calamari and kept sticking her finger in her mouth to make the Admiral Akbar sound. And she was using shared dice, and it was like...
Did you have the slow motion? No.
No, it wasn't until later. Like we finished up the game, and I'm like, oh my God, you've been putting your finger in your mouth the whole time. I'm like, everybody's been touching those dice on day 4 of Gen Con. Like,
Oh.
she didn't get sick. I mean, to her credit, like she has mom immune system. Like,
Yeah. It's like little kids, like, eating dirt to stay healthy. Or
exactly.
something.
Like she may never get con crud again after that experience.
You know this, like the third or the second or third best thing about having a guest on is we get to tell all the stories.
Right.
Yeah.
The chat room already knows these stories.
Thank you, Hannah, for being such a good sport and listening to our stories.
Oh yeah. I'm like the new kid, so hearing them for the first time.
Last thing, community chatter. We already mentioned it before. We're going to mention it again. Darcy Ross joins Monty Cook Games.
So awesome.
Congratulations. Yep. I can't wait to see all the cool things that she gets to do for them now.
I'm just wondering, will their campaign season be mollusk based? Like, is there going to be like a heavy mollusk push for the first year of Numenera?
Interesting. Yeah.
After that, that's pretty much it. Well, why don't we do a few Patreon shoutouts before we get out of here?
Yeah.
So Remy Bilodeau, Noah Bond, Stacy Winters, Todd Crapper, whose Kickstarter will be over by the time everybody hears this, but it's well funded and successful, and Blaise Hebert. Thank you so much for being our patrons. We appreciate you greatly, and we couldn't do this without you. Is there anything else in the chat room for Hannah or for us before we get out of here?
I think we're good to go.
All right. Well,
let's do the thing.
Hannah, before we leave, thank you so much for being here and for chatting with us about Damn the Man Save the Music. I'm so glad that the game has already reached its funding goal and way beyond its funding goal. I hope you get another $10,000 or $20,000 before it's all said and done.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And before we get all into the scripty part of the closing, Hannah, how do people find you on the internet?
Oh, yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at HanBandit. Or on Twitter at Make Big Things for my game company, and our website is makebigthings.com.
Awesome.
And by the way, people in the chat room are saying we love you, Hannah, and thank you, Hannah.
Oh, I love you guys. Thank you. Yeah. That makes me so happy and warm and fuzzy.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening.
If you are free on Tuesday evenings, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 6:45 p.m. the Queen's time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with the other listeners in our ever awesome chat room for life and ask us questions.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Threats from Gallifrey, Advantage to Insight, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnome Cast, The Streets of Avalon with the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, Hobbs and Friends of the OSR, and Bonestone and Obsidian, our new Dark Sun D&D podcast. You can and should also check out some of our brother and sister podcasts. She's a Super Geek, Talking Tabletop, if another episode ever comes out. I hope it does. The Knights of the Night, who are now putting out games again. They just played Lasers and Feelings. And the always amazing Gaming MBS.
After you have listened to the show and before you sell out to the man, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly at Chris@misdirectedmark.com.
That's me.
Phil@misdirectedmark.com.
He's over there.
Or Bob@misdirectedmark.com.
Down at the end.
Check out our Facebook group. Hit us up on Twitter @misdirectedmark, @DNAPhil, @Robert M. Everson, @TheLight101.
Where you can get your smooth jazz or PMJ jazz all day long.
And truck over to the Revolution Records of our social media community out on G+.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMP. Patrons get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, bi-weekly D&D offerings, and other special releases. And with that, this has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out!